This podcast is brought to you by Pragmatic Solutions, the leading iGaming PAM platform with a modular approach, including many benefits like a fast, secure, and scalable API-based platform, integrated with all major third-party products and services. Make sure you head over to Pragmatic Solutions and join our smart thinking.
This podcast is brought to you by Pragmatic Play, a leading game developer providing player favorites to the most successful brands across the industry. With an award-winning multi-product portfolio of slots, live casino, bingo, virtual sports, and more, Pragmatic Play is powering up new possibilities of play through one single API. Visit pragmaticplay.com and discover your favorite every time.
All right, Mark. So I want to start this podcast by telling the story of the first time I met you, which was at the Yolo retreat of 2021, I believe, 2021. And so this is the Yolo partner event where all the subsidiary companies, all the partners are invited, about 100 people for a couple of days of activities, learning, and so on and so forth. And that event, they announced a person of the event. And the person of the event was Mark Taffler. And I would think that is at the top of your resume these days, the Yolo partner person of the year 2021.
Yeah, I mean, it was very surprising and humbling. I don't know quite what I did to deserve it, but yeah, it was a lovely gesture, and I got a signed cricket bat for it. So yeah. There you go. No, it was a great event that as well. Really good fun. Yeah,
it's become a staple now, right?
Very much so, yeah.
Every year we look forward to it, and it's getting better and better, and Yolo managed to pull together some of the most interesting people in the industry.
Who was the guy we saw this year? It was the guy from...
from Shazam.
Shazam.
No.
Yes, it was Shazam.
Was it Shazam?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. Shazam.
The founder of Shazam.
Yeah, the founder of Shazam. That's how it was. Yeah. Chris something.
Yeah, that was really good.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
It's ironic, really, because at that time when I met you there, I was working at one of the investments from Yolo, Green Jade.
Right.
And then now I'm on the other side of the fence. So.
Yeah. You got blooded teeth there.
Yeah, exactly.
Jumped over the fence.
Yeah. Life comes at you fast.
Yeah, that's for sure, Mark. Yeah. So Mark, it's been great since then to get to know you more and more, of course, and we kind of been in the same sphere for a number of years, and I built up a tremendous amount of respect for yourself and the way you conduct yourself at the event. You're incredible at building relationships at the event and expanded that network, and you're one of those people that are just very nice to be around. So I'm just very happy to have you here on the podcast first and foremost today, Mark. But today the topic of today is addiction, actually, and even though the last couple of years when I've known you, Mark, I've seen you in the best possible light, but you've talked about recently now that you have a past that is quite different from how it is today. So can you just start to talk about your own journey from falling into substance addictions to perhaps how you managed to take yourself out of that spiral? Can you tell the story from the beginning until today?
I'll certainly try.
We have time.
Okay, good. Okay, great. Well, thank you firstly for your kind words, Pierre, and I feel the same for you. I've got a huge respect for you, and I really enjoy it when we spend time together. We end up sort of bumping into each other at conferences and dinners.
I love it.
Yeah, and I'm always watching what you do. So this is really lovely for me to be here as well.
Yeah, pleasure.
So thank you for giving me the platform, because I think what's really important, the one thing that I would like for just one person maybe that happens to see this is to know that there's a different way, and that life doesn't have to be dark and hopeless. There are millions of cases of people who manage to live with addiction in their lives and not have to succumb to it. And today, I'm one of the people that is lucky enough to be leading that journey. So, for me, this is a message of hope to anybody who's struggling, and anyone out there who thinks they're alone. Because, if I turn the clock back, I had a normal life. I was a kid, grew up in London, then moved just outside of London. And maybe in retrospect, my parents had an inkling that I was slightly different because they moved many miles away from London, as they saw London getting a little bit rough, and I think that I would have been safer in a quieter location, and very typical upbringing, very typical, no abuse, no nothing like that, but I find everything is retrospective. As I look back on things, I can now see signs and signals and what have you. And I think today, if I were to be 15 today, I probably would be diagnosed with maybe ADHD or autism or something like that. And, I was only reflecting on this over the weekend that, I used to have an inability to sit still, and I was always playing a tune on my fingers or counting beats to songs or, kicking, with my feet. And I had kind of a general dis-ease with myself and the world around me. I was slightly rebellious at school, perhaps, slightly over the top. But it was when I was probably 14 and, the rite of passage of a young boy is to go and drink in the park with friends, right? And the drink of choice at the time was Thunderbird. I don't know if you're aware of Thunderbird.
No, I haven't heard about it.
No, it's probably best that you don't.
It's a good thing, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Thunderbird was this fortified wine. So it was like a 16% sort of drink, but it was a wine thing.
Yeah.
It was absolutely feral. I just have a vivid memory. We were in the park, we were 14 and we were drinking it, and it's like my life changed. It's like everything made sense.
Oh, wow.
The overriding uncomfortability that I'd had in my own skin up until that point disappeared.
Wow.
And I thought, that's it. This is the magic elixir of life. I found it.
Wow.
And even that night, all my friends, had a little bit to drink and played a bit silly, and I ended the night, somewhere in a bush being sick, and woke up feeling horrific, but knowing very well that I was going to do it again, because that feeling that it gave me was wonderful.
It was the solution, yes.
100%. It was the solution. And that was probably the start. So I think my point here is that there was nothing that happened to me in my upbringing that was a trigger. And I think I spent a lot of time, and we hear a lot of people talk about, we have to look at the root cause of things and we have to understand the whys in order to be able to deal with the core problem. And that very premise, that very sort of thought process, I think stopped me from finding the solution and getting well for probably 20 years. Because I lived in and out of psychiatrists and trying to find out what was wrong with me. Because I felt different to how everybody looked. And I know that sounds slightly counterintuitive, but I was always comparing my insides to everybody else's outsides.
Right. Classic thing to do, I think.
Right? Not realizing that they probably have their own things as well, right?
They think the same way. Yeah.
Well, yeah, certainly. And now I know a good proportion of people do. And that's why it's so important for me, we hear a lot about mental illness today and there needing to be an openness about discussing it. But in my opinion, in my experience, addiction is something that still falls by the wayside and has a bit of a stigma attached to it. But by definition, it is an illness. The NHS view it as an illness and it comes with treatment plans and etc. But my journey, if you will, during my abuse as such was not exciting. I meet people and the discussion comes, oh, why aren't you drinking? And I don't hide it. I say, yeah, I'm in recovery. How much did you used to drink? Did you drink every day?
Yeah.
Did you drink vodka at breakfast?
Right.
Do you sit in them rooms round like in the films? And I think my role is to kind of break that stereotype and I wasn't drinking vodka at breakfast. I wasn't. I had a degree. I'd worked for my boyhood football club, Chelsea, very successfully. I'd run my own business very successfully. I was working for a very large blue chip handset manufacturer at the time. My career was in its ascendancy.
Right. So at the same time as you had that other side, let's say you were functioning in your day-to-day.
Exactly. And that was one of the things that I was like, well, there's nothing wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
Look at me. I'm driving around in a Mercedes. I'm doing all this cool stuff, and I just always felt very, very ill. And I think that again with hindsight, I always felt worse when I had no drink inside of me. Whether it be the anxiety, the palpitations, and you speak to anyone and that's because of, but it's not. It's not because of the drinking that I had those conditions. Those conditions were omnipotent within me, that I drank to get rid of them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, to mask them.
Yeah, exactly. To feel normal.
Yeah.
The definition of excuse me, of addiction, in any sense, is that if once you start, whatever substance it might be or whatever behavior, that you are unable to stop of your own volition.
Right.
If you were to be given a drink, just have that one.
It's like the craving of taking another one.
Exactly.
Overrides anything else, right?
And that's like there's kind of three elements to addiction. There's the mental craving, the physical addiction. So that means it's the mental obsession. Sorry, that all you think about is this solution that you found, which gives you peace, right? Prior to finding the solution to the peace, your life is chaotic. It's unmanageable, completely unmanageable. And once you take a drink, peace comes. But then your body, it actually digests alcohol a lot differently to a non-alcoholic.
Okay.
And you become you have a physical craving.
Yeah.
And I think it's the only way I can liken it is to smokers. Smokers crave the nicotine from a cigarette, which is why they smoke. It's the addictive substance within a cigarette.
Yeah.
I have to, otherwise something bad's going to happen. I need to have that drink.
Right. Minutes feel like seconds feel like minutes, and so on and so forth.
Exactly. And it then starts to consume everything, because then, physiologically you become able to drink more. So you do, and then,
tolerance goes up.
Yeah,
and also alcohol too. When you are an alcoholic and you go cold turkey, it is quite dangerous, I think, even to cut alcohol as an alcoholic, because the consequences of that can be quite bad in itself on a physical level. I think
it can kill you.
Yeah,
you can die.
From stop as an alcoholic to stop drink alcohol,
you die.
Can kill
die.
you.
Yeah. I mean, it's ironic to say the least.
Right.
But no, I mean, I had that once when I went to a rehab and I had to be detoxed from the alcohol slowly in order that I wasn't dying, But it's the cycle just continues, right? And I didn't realize what I was, and I'm out there searching for answers, and in 12-step recovery, there's a book that we use. And in there's a chapter where it lists out all of the things that an active alcoholic has tried to do in order to convince themselves that they weren't alcoholic.
Right.
This thing was written in 1935, right? Okay. And there I am in 2000 and whatever it was when I first got sober, reading it and just aghast. We drank only white drinks, so no red wine, no rum. We didn't drink at work. We didn't drink on weekends, et cetera, et cetera. All these things. And I did them all. We took a trip, the amount of times I'm going to Thailand to find myself.
Right.
Yeah, so banal looking back, but you know, I'm in that situation, you know.
Yeah.
I sort of go off and I do a 30-day, you know, vinyasa meditation retreat in Goa, and
Yeah.
you know, get myself hair braided when I had hair, and you know, like I come back and I'm fixed, you know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, exactly.
and until the slightest life challenge comes, and that's it, I'm back to it.
Right.
You know, so during this whole period in my life, you know, this 20 plus years, you know, I've got kind of 2 full-time jobs, right? Well, one is working and earning money, and the other one is well, actually 3. The other one is drinking and feeling rough, and the other one is convincing myself that I'm not an alcoholic.
Right.
You know.
But it's kind of, so you're saying that in one sense you are trying to convince yourself that you're not an alcoholic because of this and this and that. You are able to function, you're able to work, and therefore this behavior is somewhat acceptable, let's say. But on the other hand, it sounds like there was always in the back of your mind, it sounds almost like you knew, because you were you did go to Thailand or whatever. You did realize that there was a problem at the same time, right? But maybe that voice was a bit weaker than the voice that was trying to accept the behavior.
You're absolutely right. You know, there was blatantly something wrong. I knew there was something wrong, but I think the biggest fear was that I didn't know what was wrong.
All right.
There is obviously a conditioned defense of the tools that you use to make yourself feel okay, you know, which was the booze. So no, I'm not an alcoholic. I suffer with this mental condition, that mental condition, the other mental condition. The reality was none of those things.
Right.
Absolutely none of those things, you know.
Yeah.
And no matter how many you know, medical professionals that I saw, you know, prescriptions that I was written, and let's be very clear, all of the medical professionals I saw I lied to. Because I didn't want them to tell me to stop drinking.
So you proactively went to them, but then when you sat down with them, you chose not to tell the full truth.
Of course, 100%.
Right?
Yeah,
interesting. Yeah.
Absolutely, because I know,
right.
I know what the problem is, right?
Yeah,
but, you know, how much do you drink? What's the unit allowance for a week?
Yeah.
Well, you see, what I do, right, there's always a story.
Yeah.
What I do is, right, so I save it up, and so I don't drink in the week, and I save it up, and then I have it all on a Friday and a Saturday. That's all right, right? You know, that's okay to do, yeah? Always looking for someone to tell me that I was okay.
Right. You wanted to get the validation that it wasn't as bad as you might have thought yourself. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah, completely.
Yeah.
But you know, it's just, I mean, it's ludicrous when I think about it now. And then on the 25th of July, 2013, that was the back end of what was quite a monumental bender, as it's called. And I, you know, actively took an attempt at my own life. Because I'd been to these medical professionals and had been given medication, you know, my cupboard looked like one of the counter displays at Boots, and you know, I'd been out and, you know, drinking and drugging, and I took everything I had in my house, and I wanted to die. You know, it was that dark, and prior to that, again, only with hindsight, the only thing that kept me going was the knowledge that I could check out at any time on my own terms.
Yeah.
You know, having the only piece, you know, it's pretty tragic when you realize that the only piece of control you have left in your life is that you can take your own life.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, that's the control that you felt that you have, that you were lacking in your day-to-day.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So, you know, I came round in hospital a couple of days later, and that was it. Believe it or not, I was done, you know, and
it was rock bottom.
Yeah, without question. I mean, I'd been into rehabs prior to that, and I'd tried 12-step recovery, and I'd tried all the stuff, but, you know, I was denying it. I just didn't want to accept. I was very, very scared because I didn't know another way to live. You know, I had no experience of living in any way, shape or form without my best mate, alcohol, you know.
Right.
Any situation, it doesn't matter what it would be, you know, good, bad, indifferent, drink would be there.
Yeah.
And it's the thing that made that knot in my stomach disappear. And, you know, when I came around in hospital, I just knew, you know, some people maybe say it's a moment of a higher power talking to them. And, you know, I don't want to get too on that tip, but, you know, for me it was, I had no doubts about what my next moves were.
Right.
You know, there was no question. It was the most clear I've ever been about anything.
Were you surprised when you woke up?
To be honest with you, when I first came around, I was like, oh, fuck, I can't even do that properly.
Yeah, that was what I thought.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I can't even kill myself properly. Like
Yeah.
you know, that's it. I'm useless.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I knew what I had to do. You know, I knew, and that was, you know, to change everything. Nothing changes if nothing changes, right? You know, and gone were the times for me to do these kind of transient shifts in my life where I'd move country or location where I lived, or change small micro changes. You know, this needed to be wholesale, and it needed to start with me, because I was the problem. Not because of anything that I'd done, but I had this affliction that I believe I was born with, and I had to address it, and I didn't know how to. You know, I had no idea how to, and you know, this isn't bemoaning any of the you know, institutional medical professionals or you know, no one knew anything about addiction when I was growing up. You know, I grew up in a different time. You know. No one knew anything about it. You know, these were the days when the doctor would just tell you to take a paracetamol and stop moaning. You know, that was, you know, so much for the good British stiff upper lip, right? You know, what's wrong with you, boy? You know,
Yeah. Toughen up.
Toughen up.
Yeah.
Ridiculous. You
Yeah.
need to grow up. You'll be fine when you're 20.
Yeah. You grow out of it.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, so. That then was the start of my of what's been the best part of my whole entire life,
Right.
Without a shadow of doubt, you know. And it starts with me, as in I'm the problem. I suffer from an addiction, and what that means to me is that I'm unable to consume anything that changes my state of mind, whether that be drink, drugs, whatever it might be. You know, there are, I believe, and I could be wrong, you know, 250 addictions that qualify for addiction. Yeah. You know, where you are unable to stop once you've started, of your own volition.
Right.
But you know, the learnings that I've gained from being in recovery have enabled me to finally taste that peace that I was searching for from alcohol. Yeah. You know. And I say taste because life is life, you know. But I'm able to function today as a decent member of society, to the best of my abilities. But I have to do the work. I have to do the work daily.
Yeah.
You know. And you know, if you wanted to kind of give psychological markers to what an addict is. Addicts are scared. They're petrified of everything. Fear. In our literature, it tells us it's almost like stealing, fear to us, because it causes more trouble. You know, we're scared of what's going to happen when we don't know. We're scared of what did happen because of the potential consequences. We're scared of everything. Yeah. And that living with that fear, it then manifests in other ways. Normally anger. Anger isn't an emotion, it's a reaction that masks fear, or embarrassment, you know, one of the two. Resentment is they say it's the number one offender with addicts. You know, so if you're walking around, well, that person did this to me and well, I'm going to get them back in this way, and you know, you might as well die. It's, you know, and selfishness as well, and trying to have one's own will and exert that onto those around you. Yeah. It's unhealthy for an addict. Yeah. I mean, it's unhealthy for anyone, but
Can you talk, Mark? So it started with the first drink at 14. You realized that you reacted differently, perhaps than your friends reacted to their first drink. Can you talk about going from there to kind of when the addiction manifested in negative ways, let's say, like when you started to go too far, and in what way did it manifest? And do you have any examples of, like, perhaps in the beginning, and then also maybe some more extreme situations that happened to you?
Yeah, of course. I mean, unfortunately, it's all pretty droll. There was a lot of fun. I won't lie about that. There was a lot of trips around Europe watching football, and falling asleep during the Champions League final against Manchester United, which was good because we lost. And
thank God.
Yeah, exactly. For many years being told about what happened during the football, because I'd have no memory of it. To just downright stupidness. But I believe that if you put enough drink or substances in any human being, they will act in stupid ways. The fights, the stupidness that comes with it, Yeah. But towards the very end, it was me in my flat on my own.
Just drinking?
Yeah.
Drinking at home?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Just on my own. Because people didn't want me around. They didn't want me around anymore. I was really boring. I'd normally get thrown out by a bouncer. Then they'd have to look after me all night. Yeah. No one wanted to be with me. Yeah. And of course, the other dichotomy is that you shut out the people that really love you. So my mum was shut from my life for 15 years. Not as in I never saw her, but I never told her what I was doing.
Right.
She never really felt what was going on in my life because it was all a facade. Yeah. Because my life was a tragic, boring, me on the sofa, hammered. Yeah. And that's kind of the reality of it. There's funny stories just come to my mind actually. Right. When I worked at Chelsea, and this is an example of how the alcohol could enable me to be more confident and cheeky. Okay. So we went out. I went out, and I used to get with the players quite a lot. And I went out this one night with John Terry and Ida Goodjohnson. We went for a meal in Chelsea, and Peter Kenyon had just signed as the CEO of the club, and the lads sent him over a bottle of wine to the table. Listen to me, the lads, like that's like the way they call each other. Like one of them, no, not really. And of course, I was showing off and trying to drink with them, but obviously drinking more. And in the end, I went over to Peter Kenyon's table. I don't know who it's with. He could have been closing a deal for Didier Drogba for all I know. And the last thing he wants is this little fat kid coming over to him hammered. So I walked over to him and I said, "Hi, Peter, I'm Mark. I work at Chelsea." He said, "Yes, I know who you are." So, these are the kind of things that are potentially career inhibiting, that don't happen anymore, fortunately. But no, one of the things that a therapist, well, not a therapist, an alcohol counsellor, he got me straight away, with this addict. I speak only for myself, not the general masses. We're juxtaposed, right? As in, we come across as being supremely confident, very arrogant almost, but realistically we're vacuous, empty, frightened kids. So that front, it hides, what's really going on. Right. And this guy, he was like, he didn't say anything. These people that come into my life, and it's only when I have a moment of clarity I look back and go, wow, you're good, you're smart, and it's these sorts of little things that I try and pick up and take with me into my daily life. The way these sort of little micro engagements that you have with people that you think that's really good. Yeah. And he said to me, I suggest, not go, not must go, not do. I suggest, that you go to this session in Guildford, just outside of London. It's tonight, 7:30. Here's the address. So of course. Okay, I got nothing else to do. For some reason I went, and I walk in, it's this beautiful, massive old country house right? It's got like an open fireplace, you know, big wooden panels, what you'd think as typical English country houses.
Right.
And I'm late to the meeting because I was late to everything, you know, because I was so important that people had to wait for me, right?
Right.
You know, I couldn't have the good manners to come a little bit earlier on time.
Yeah.
I'd be late, cause a scene, everyone noticed me, right? And I sit down and, you know, there's a big room, and I look to the right of me and there's Eric Clapton, and I look to the left of me and there's Ringo Starr.
Wow.
And I was like, no.
Okay.
Okay, fair enough. You know, that was just one of those things that he was saying to me, you are shit on a shoe, pal. You're nothing. You think you're big time. You know, you think you've lived. He said, you've not done anything. But he had to show me via another way, you know? And it was beautiful. You know, that moment where I realized how insignificant I was in real terms.
Right.
You know, and I don't say that out of false pride or, you know, false humility. It's true. These two guys are legends.
Right.
Yet they're in there being humble, even though they're super famous. You know, and it really dawned on me that, okay, I have to get rid of my ego. My ego is the problem here because it's the thing that's stopping me from getting well. And then on the flip side, when I first started to really invest in getting well and going to 12-step fellowship meetings, this was in a place called Corby in the Midlands in England. And Corby was an overspill from Glasgow, strangely, back in the 60s, when they built some quarries and mills and stuff, and the Glaswegians came down. And there was still a large population of Glaswegians in Corby. And so I go in there, you know, I'm this sort of cocky sort of pseudo-Londoner, you know, and I walk in and I still remember it. The first time, this guy after the meeting, he comes up to me, he goes, all right, Marky, see you've got your ego to fuck, pal. See your ego, that's going to kill you. It's like, we hadn't even spoken 2 words. I didn't even know his name. But like that's what I was emitting, you know, exactly. From me. That it must have been this prickly energy that I was emitting.
And they recognize that, obviously, from their own experiences and so on.
And that, Pierre, is an extremely good point. You recognize it. There's a term, if you spot it, you've got it.
Right.
You know, and if you see a quality in someone that makes you go, ugh, there's a good chance that you also have that quality and you don't like it in yourself.
Right.
You know, so I'm grateful to that guy. You know, he became a mentor to me and helped me through my early years of recovery. So I'm very grateful to him. Yeah.
Can you talk more about, so when you had the episode of trying to take your own life and you had the epiphany of now it's time to change. So you go into the 12-step program. Can you talk about that process in itself? What, like, through that process, what made you get to a point of genuine change? Because you had went before, right, and you hadn't been able to kick the addiction. What was it that made you succeed that time?
It's a phrase that I've heard and I subscribe to. Is I was given the gift of desperation, and it is a gift. Trust me. I was broken, you know, and I think being suicidal is not the way that you start a normal conversation, but like being suicidal is not something you can explain to someone unless they've been that way. It's not a mindset that you can explain. It's inexplicable. You can only describe it as grey and empty and hollow and black. You know, everything that is negative that you could possibly associate with wanting no longer to be alive, it's that. It's like if you have never had a panic attack, you can't explain it to someone. You have to have had it in order to understand that feeling. And yeah, I was desperate because the way I wanted to approach it didn't work. So I had no choices left, right? You know, I thought I had choices, and that was to end my life. But I didn't have choices anymore because that hadn't worked. So I was desperate. You know, I used to say, if someone had have told me that I had to jump up and down on one leg and eat biscuits all day, I would have done it, as long as I didn't have to feel like I did anymore.
Wow.
You know, our addiction is 1% the substance that you end up choosing, and most addicts, again, I speak for myself, cross addict. You know, it will be anything, right? It doesn't matter what it is, as long as it stops you feeling the way that you don't like to feel, then you'll do it.
Right, and that can be anything from alcohol to gambling, for example.
Yeah,
anything, right?
Yeah, with drugs and everything in between, right?
Right.
So it's a whole spectrum of the same shit, basically, and you'll do whatever you need to do to feel however you need to feel, because you become very adept at fighting the outside world and forming a safe shell of numbness that enables you to live, you know, in a way that you feel is acceptable, but it's not acceptable. Yeah. So to come back to your question, what was it? It was the gift of desperation.
Right. You had no other choice, basically.
Nothing.
There wasn't anything else.
No.
Yeah.
I would love to say, you know, that it was the love and support of my friends, or it was no longer wishing to hurt my mum, you know, or it was wishing to be a good partner. That would be lies. It wasn't that cognizant. It was the fact that I was just desperate.
Yeah.
I no longer wanted to feel that rock in my solar plexus, and the palpitations and the cold sweats and the negativity and the confusion. I genuinely at times thought that I was mentally unwell, like properly. Yeah. The thought processes that I had. And then I have these moments when I go into a room of other people who wish to try and recover from their addictions. And they're not talking about what it is that they drank or used or how bad they got or when they did it. They're talking about how they felt. And that's one of the most unbelievable feelings you can possibly imagine. That when you're sat with a stranger, you come from different walks of life. You know, it might be a woman in her 80s, it might be a guy in whatever, but they're saying something that you recognize. I mean, that's. I was like, what? There was a point where I was like, hang on, where's my mum? Like, this has been set up, right? You know? That
is like the same kind of stories coming from a lot of people.
Yeah. Like how it's candid camera. You've all been paid to be it, right? Right? How are you saying what I'm feeling? Yeah. Like, we've never met. Like, right. You know, we couldn't be from more different places, but you're saying the stuff that I feel. And that was it. I was sold.
Yeah. Amazing. You know? So I have a question for you. So it's interesting that you had to, and I suppose this is from fairly reoccurring story, I suppose, that many addicts, they hit rock bottom in order to then move to a journey of feeling better. But if you would go back in hindsight and look at when you navigated your addiction, would there have been any other way for you to exit the addiction or to get control of the addiction other than hitting rock bottom, do you think?
For me, no.
Yeah.
Because that was my journey. And I tried. You know, I tried the running away. I tried the fitness. You know, I'd set myself tasks. Yeah. I go, like, 3 months I'm not drinking, because like that I can prove that I'm not an addict.
Right. That's like such a typical thing to do, right?
Right.
Dry January or whatever, because you know I can do it, so that must be okay.
So I've done it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Now we can go back to drinking again.
Twice as hard.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
But no, I'd do that. I'd do it all. You know, I'd get to whatever. You know, right. I've had enough. I'm going. So I'd get a personal trainer, and I'd be in the gym twice a day. I'd never do anything in a consistent, sustainable way. Twice a day in the gym with a personal trainer. I mean, what are you doing? You know, it's lunacy. To come out the other side feeling relatively well, healthily, physically, but still being inside just numb, you know, like still not finding that thing that satiates me. Yeah. So then you go back to it.
Yeah, exactly. But once again, Mark, you know, would you say that there are many different forms of addiction and how they manifest? So again, for you, you had to hit rock bottom in order to get on a better path. Is that the same for most people who are addicted to substances or to gambling or anything else, or does it manifest in different ways for different people?
It does manifest in different ways. You're absolutely right. And you know, I've seen people who have managed to get well and maintain their wellness without having hit what... But everyone's rock bottom is different, right? You know, not everyone has to go to my rock bottom. And probably some people have been lower than my rock bottom, if that makes any sense. And I think it's all very, very subjective. You know, but that's part of everyone's different journey. So I've met people who can come in and not have much wrong in their lives, ostensibly, but they're still desperate because it's hurting them enough. You know, so their rock bottom is different to my rock bottom. But my experience is that unless you've hit something, then I haven't seen people manage to maintain.
Right, because it is the, I suppose, the motivation, or whatever you want to call it, to when you get to that point, to never want to hit that point again.
Because what I see is a lot of times people come in because of someone else, right? They try to get well because a partner or a parent or a child or whatever it is begging them. And, you know, please don't do it anymore, Daddy. Please don't do it anymore, mate. Please don't do it anymore, sweetheart. And they go to appease the request from the loved one.
Right, and that's not sustainable. Right, it has to come from...
No, and it's actually worse, because what happens is then you create resentment against that person for making you... making you get well, right? You're just getting in the way of my fun, you know?
Yeah, exactly. It becomes an obstacle.
And then, as we said earlier, you know, resentment's the number one offender. So you've got someone who's not well, resentful against someone they love. I mean, it's a cocktail for disaster, unfortunately.
I also want to ask you, Mark, you know, it must be difficult, perhaps, to recognize that you are in a unsustainable kind of lifestyle, because I can just say, you know, moving to Malta 12 years ago as a fairly young guy, the culture here was very much everything is focused on the parties, right? So several times a week, it's pretty standard, pretty normal that everyone goes out to get smashed, and then we go to work on Monday and we laugh about it and we plan the next weekend's drinking activities. And the culture very much kind of revolves around the drinking here. And what happens through that is that it becomes normalized, right? So no one stands out in as such. But sometimes we would say to each other, like, just like think about it for a bit. You know, where I'm grown up in a little village in Sweden, you know, 3,000 people. If any one of us would have this behavior in this village, they would be recognized as the village alcoholic, right? Because it's a different context, but it's the same behavior. So I wonder a bit how much of the problem is also that you perhaps start seeking yourself to groups or to individuals that are displaying the same behavior in a way where you just feel like you're part of the group, let's say, and to kind of mask the actual problem. I
mean, you're right. You know, the cultural piece is definitely a contributing factor. However, I think unless you are an addict, you can mix with whoever you want, and you won't get to that stage. You know, I know. Let's say, you know, I mean, you talk about the little village. In the village that I ended up growing in, they were all like that. So
it's different villages.
Different
culture.
That was a really
right.
I mean, Sweden is much more civilized than the Midlands in England, I'm sure.
I'd beg to differ in some instances,
but no, I mean, you know, you can get carried along by the tide, right? You can knock around with a bad crowd. Well, I think we've all done that. You know, and I think there's an element of the human condition which means that as we go through life trying to find out who we are, to find our identity, we take a peek into lots of different social circles to see whether we fit into that. You know, and that might be sitting at the top table in luxurious surroundings, drinking, you know, 60-year-old Petrus, you know, but justifying it because it's 60-year-old Petrus at 24 grand a bottle, you know, or in the doldrums drinking, a can of Chisk. It's not, I don't believe, and my experience doesn't tell me that it's anything to do with the crowd you associate with. You if you are of the type of addict that I am, you will find your way irrespective of the people around you.
Yeah. But isn't it also a part of this kind of story you're telling yourself that your behavior is normal by being with other people who are displaying the same behavior?
No, you're right. It is, but if you are that person in that group, it won't last for long, because even the people that are doing it at your level will get pissed off with you.
Yeah. Okay.
They'll shun you. Yeah. Because you will.
So you're constantly moving social circles. That's what you're getting at. Yeah. You're never stable in one circle. No. You're always moving around.
Because you don't want to burn bridges.
Yeah.
It becomes a tiring lifestyle.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious to know as well, from your perspective, Mark, if we look at the iGaming industry, there are a couple of particular positions that are very socially focused in this industry, like say B2B account management, for example. It is a highly socially kind of performing role where you have to be out and entertain your clients as much as possible, and with that comes a lot of drinking, a lot of late nights in order to be close to your partners. It's a particular culture within the industry, I would say. Is that something you look at and sometimes and think that, do you feel that is kind of like how would you say, like a recipe for a potential disaster in some individuals? It's kind of seeking themselves into that particular position and being offered those opportunities and that lifestyle. Is that a potential risky behavior or risky roles and so on? Do you see problems in that area as well?
I think if the people that were wishing to hide behind that role as enabling them to be able to drink like that weren't in B2B gaming, they'd be in insurance sales or investment banking or another industry that allows them to manifest what they wish to behave like. I've seen a marked change in this industry since I've been in it. I think gone are the days where everything's about getting hammered with your customers. I think that professionalism has overtaken that now. And with the industry growing and becoming more, consolidated and, having to work harder for the same margins, there's no time to have a hangover in this industry, You take a customer out, the next morning you've got to be following up on what's been discussed at dinner. And the best people in the industry will be the ones that do that. Yeah. And if the customer wishes to indulge themselves overnight, then that's the customer's choice. Yeah. But I don't actually see it with my own eyes, to be honest with you, not at close quarters anyway.
No.
And like I said, if anything, it's gotten a lot better.
Yeah, and that I 100% agree with you on as well. That in the years that I've been in the industry as well, it was very different days in the 2000s than what it is now. Yeah. In the 2000s, everyone succeeded. All the companies went well. It wasn't really possible to see kind of the difference between good and bad companies because everyone was just succeeding at the same time.
Yeah.
And with that came a lot of problems on the social front for sure. I would still say though that when I'm out a lot at the conferences and some of the activities, we do see especially a lot of younger account managers, I think, that feel the pressure of they feel like the best way to succeed in this role is to be the person who is in the center of everything and who can be the life of the party and so on, and they tend to create sometimes that image around them that can be really difficult to escape. Because when you are known as the life of the party, then you will attract those who are excited about that, you as a person from that perspective, and then it's really difficult to take a step away from that, right? When
I couldn't agree more, and even thinking about being that person makes me feel anxious. Like it makes my palms sweat thinking for that whoever that person might be. But I think in that sense, maybe they're not getting the right guidance.
Yeah.
Right. if I was ever in a position of responsibility with a team and I had a team member that was doing that, I'd certainly suggest to them there's a different way. Because I think as I've grown as a person, what is life and soul of the party now? For me, it's someone whom asks questions, whom has insights, whom I can learn from, sat round having a dinner. You know, I have no desires to be around someone who wants me to drink Jaeger bombs and go to a club till 5 a.m. And that's not because I'm approaching 50, and it's not because I'm in recovery. I think, you know, it's because like
a little bit of the approach of 50, maybe. a little bit,
or a lot. Then a lot. It's because I'm approaching 50. Yeah. Because it's just boring.
Yeah.
It's just, and also how much more business are you going to do if you're hammered with someone at that level?
Yeah.
You're not.
No.
I'd much rather sit and have a conversation with someone who's got some interesting stories to tell and learn something than it's been a holistically good night.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely. I try to always tell the younger account managers to not get sucked into that culture against their own will, you know, because sometimes there is that pressure that they should take that extra step, or they should drink even though they don't want to, and so on. Just be yourself, you know, because you're absolutely right. You know, there's this, you talked earlier about the kind of how you judge yourself and then how you look at other people in the best possible light, let's say. And we are social creatures, right? So we would go to a party or a social situation, and there would be someone who is the who is the life of the party, and everyone you feel that everyone is looking up to this person, and you get this urge to be just like that in order to succeed socially. But as you point out, you know, if I think as well about the people that I'm most comfortable with in a social situation, it's not necessarily those who are the loudest. No. Right? This is those who can listen to me, because everyone likes to speak and to be listened to, and those who can have interesting conversations with, right?
Yeah,
those
absolutely. And you know, I've tried it sometimes, and you know, try and get people like that on a one-to-one and have a chat with them.
Difficult.
Oh yeah.
Difficult.
Oh, very, very.
They live on the surface.
Massively. You know, there is a huge barrier there straight away.
Yeah.
You know, it's impossible to have any depth of conversation or learn anything.
Yeah.
So personally, you know, you know, one of the things that recovery has given me is the ability to not take things personally, but also to be more selective with what I do with my time. I think with this addict, there was a large element of people pleasing about me. So I would say yes to everything, do all the stuff like we were just chatting about. And what I found fascinating is that as I've changed over the years to remove that behaviour from my life, nothing's changed. So it didn't work. No one cared, and no one cares now. You know, which is beautifully freeing.
Yeah.
You know, because we can, you know, be lost in our imaginings of what someone thinks or what someone doesn't think, or you know, no one's thinking about me right now. No one gives a shit. And I don't say that in a negative way. It's wonderful. You know, it's so freeing. I have this much impact on the world. This much, and it's about what I can control today. You know, I can control showing up, washed, showered, wearing decent clothes, not as inexpensive, but you know, things without holes in, on time, with a considerate manner. They're at my gift. They're in my control. Everything else is out of it. But it's practice and takes time. Yeah,
for sure. And Mark, so can you talk more about when you came out of the 12-step program? So now you have gone through this program. You are now a free bird, and Mark is now trying to set up a new life and maintain the structure that you have created through this program. Can you talk about how what were the big lessons from the 12-step program that then enabled you to hold on to this new structure afterwards as well, rather than to fall back into the addiction again?
I think it's really important to sort of note that I will be in the 12-step program for life. I still am in it. I still attend actively. You know, I have a sponsor, I have sponsees, you know, and I think that is one of the focal points, you know, the anchors in it is talking. And I think as men, we're not very good at talking about things that matter.
Right.
You know, I think that there's still a big stigma about men and their place in the world, and how we are supposed just to get on with things and not worry and not care and, you know, stiff up, chest out, you know, and all the rest of it. But it's having accountability and also being of service. And, you know, a great part of what I want to be in my life today is of service. And that sounds quite egotistical. I don't mean it to be. It's more about, it's not grand gestures. You know, it's not me going out and, you know, handing out free food it's just being available for someone if ever they need me. You know, making my time available for someone who is in need, in whatever way that might be. But there are clear principles within recovery that I follow today, and, you know, they are about not wanting to have control over everything because I can't. There's a lot of self-reflection in there. You know, a lot of watching for characteristics within me which are unhelpful to my growth. Selfishness, self-seeking, fear, etc. You know, they will come up. But the key is for me to quickly right them if they do. Saying sorry. It sounds small, right? But I'm gonna annoy people. I know that. That's just life. But I think today, I remember this guy spoke once, and I was very interested in what he had to say, and he started off the whole piece by saying, anything that I say, if you take offence to it, that's your fault. And I just sort of sat there and what do you mean? He said, well, you know, I can't give you offence. You have to take it proactively from what I've said. And that really registered with me, because I think if I know that my intentions and my motives are good, then I can sleep well at night. You know, if I've annoyed someone in some way, then they need to tell me, because there's a good chance I won't know. Right. You know, because I'm not trying to. Yeah. If that makes sense.
Yeah, in my case, my girlfriend is very good at telling me when I do something wrong. So, yes, I can relate. Yes.
Well, it sounds like she's very healthy.
Sometimes I have no idea about it.
No, of course not. Why would you? I do what now? Yeah. But it all sounds quite simple stuff, but it's not. You know, it's very important stuff. It's intrinsic, and, you know, there's a lot of similarities with the Stoics. You know, the stuff that the Stoics, Marcus Aurelius and such, you know, their approach to life, that is, you know, tens of thousands of years old now. And, you know, I take what works for me. But it is about keeping a routine. One thing that I've done ever since day one of walking into recovery, an old timer, we call them. He was about 70 at the time. And he just used to say this one thing every meeting: a relapse starts with an unmade bed. So without fail, every morning for 10 years, I've made my bed.
Yep, that's how the day starts.
Right? I make my bed, you know, and you know, then there are other pieces around, you know, my discussions with what I believe to be a higher power and my thoughts and what have you, and just looking for that guidance and support on how to operate in a world which is a bit crazy, as a person who's also a bit crazy, you know, and how best to just keep my side of the street clean. Yeah. You know, not to worry about what anyone else is doing.
So would you say for you, Mark, and for people of addiction in general, it is not necessarily that you go through this 12-step program and you are healed? Necessarily, it is an addiction and an affliction that you're carrying with you for the rest of your life, that you just need to do the best to manage and put up defenses against, let's say.
That's exactly right, yeah. I mean, and that's why this kind of recovery piece works so well, because unfortunately, as is such in life, we learn from other people's mistakes, hopefully. And, you know, I've seen encounters where people have had 20 years of sobriety and then they go back out. You know, and you learn from what they did wrong, if that makes sense, you know. And oftentimes, you know, people can see sickness in you before you can see it. You know, so again, it's important to stay around this network of people that are going to be honest with you. So, are you all right, mate? Because you know, you've started wearing like red clothes, and you know, and you've dyed your hair. Like, you're not all right, are you? You know, and it's that kind of consistency thing, you know, and it's just you sort of go from being this self-absorbed, tangled mess of chaos to being selfless as possible, and open to new thoughts and ideas. To, you know, you become a receiver rather than a blocker. And I know we discussed this the other time, but, you know, like Alan Watts talks about the water. You know, he talks about life like being not like clouds, but like a lake, like a river. And sometimes it runs smoothly, and sometimes there's rocks, you know, and sometimes it's deeper. And I think there's a lot to that, you know, and I think you can learn a lot from a lot of these speakers. But, you know, what I also believe strongly is everything's about action. Nothing changes if nothing changes. You know, so I can't sit there and bemoan X if I'm not doing Y about it.
Yeah.
You know, and I find it hard when others do that.
Right.
But you know, I'm not the arbiter of their affairs. They have to do what they need to do.
Because it's a good point, I think, that a lot of people, they have various problems in their life, and listening to inspirational videos or podcasts or reading books is often the kind of the go-to technique, let's say. But then many people, they don't really carry the lessons through into their life. It makes sense when they listen to it, they feel motivated, but then nothing happens after that, right? That's the big thing.
100%. And you know, this isn't about judgment. It's about trying to communicate a message that change is possible for everybody. Yeah. But you have to do things to change.
Yeah, it's not going to be easy.
No, it's not. It's hard, man. Yeah. It's really hard. There's a lot of crying, and there's a lot of shaking, and there's a lot of doubting yourself. But it's possible. Yeah. You know, you can go from being suicidal to sitting on a podcast with you. Yeah. You know, it takes some years, but there's no end to this thing that we're doing. No. You know, we haven't got to get anywhere because we're all going to end up in the same place. Yeah. You know, by nature's call this time, hopefully. Yeah. And I just think as long as we are true to ourselves whilst we're here. I mean, if you'd have seen my bookshelf, I mean, this is before Audible and all that sort of stuff. I was like one of these stereotypical, like preppy, you know, woke kids back in the day. It was all Paulo Coelho, you know, and Eckhart Tolle, you know, and there's nothing you couldn't tell me about spirituality. There's nothing you couldn't tell me about spirituality because I knew. I know I knew, right? Wow. Was I doing any of it? Yeah. No. Yeah. Of course not. But I had the books. I believed my own narrative. Yeah.
It becomes almost like a defense mechanism sometimes, right? With perhaps people with different afflictions that go really deep into that whole, like, I think that there's probably a considerable amount of very spiritual people who are perhaps just kind of hiding or creating defenses against their own afflictions by saying the right words.
100%.
Right? They say the right words, but there isn't the action behind it often.
I remember, it's so funny, a guy who I respect massively and I've known for years, and we speak still now. And I remember I was dating a girl at the time, and I was that horrific spiritual guy, right? I was basically Brian out of Family Guy. Do you know what I mean? Like that real cliched, horrific prick who you don't want to be anywhere near with. And I saw him this one night, and I said, he said, do you know what? I'm really pissed off. He said, what's wrong, mate? I said, well, this girl I'm seeing. I said, I'm sending all this spiritual stuff, and she's telling me not to. Like, does she not understand? Does she not see just like, you know, how papal I am? And he just said to me, he went, I don't know, mate. He said, maybe spiritual people don't talk about it.
Mic drop.
Basically,
Mic drop.
Yeah. And I just think that, you know, these little stories of ego deflation across my journey are the things that I still pick up on today. And that's why I need people around me that I trust, that I can talk to, that can shine a light and hold a mirror up to me and who I am. Because today what I know to be factual is that I'm just flesh and bones, and that I'm flawed, not because I'm an addict, but because I'm a human being, and intrinsically human beings are flawed. But I'm willing to be better. I'm willing to be shown. I'm willing to be told. And for me, the key is ego deflation. To be free of ego for me is peace. Because if I'm free of ego, then I'm not bothered about what someone thinks about me. I'm not bothered about the what ifs. I'm not bothered about this or that, and not bothered isn't a negative sense. It's a free of worry thing.
Right.
I don't have to concern myself, because what's going to happen is going to happen. As we've established, my control over the world is tiny, but as long as I'm showing up in the right way, then I stand a chance of keeping that peace.
Right. So being truly comfortable with yourself and confident means that you realize that you're not perfect, basically, and you're okay with that.
100%. Yeah, I know I'm not perfect. And I don't believe there is such a thing as perfection, and I think the strive for perfection is a wasted journey. I think it's you against you. And, if I was better than, I always do a year's reflection. At the end of every year, I journal through the year. And at the end of the year, I look back over the months and I look and see, try and get some trends or some things that were going on for me, so I can be better. But I'm not trying to be better than him or her, or achieve that and that. I'm trying to lean in further to the peace that I'm achieving, because oddly, there's a direct correlation between really doing the work, finding that peace, and then succeeding. Whatever success means. Yeah,
true.
So
Mark, you work obviously for Bombay here within the Yolo group in the gambling industry, and as a person that comes from addiction, is that playing with fire a bit to work within the gambling industry? Is that something you think about, and how do you make sure that you don't perhaps change one addiction for another addiction?
It's a very good question, and I have already done that. I have gambled a lot, but I realised it wasn't for me. It just wasn't for me. But I had to try it, obviously, just to see. But no, it's important to take gambling addiction very seriously, because of obviously the industry we work in. And I think that just like alcohol addiction or drug addiction or whatever, it's a minute percentage of the global total of people that do it, that are addicted to it. And, from what I've seen working in the industry, I see nothing to suggest to me that the industry is trying, in inverted commas, to create gambling addicts. No way. That's not the facts. Conversely, when you can buy alcohol from a petrol station on the A1 in England, I would argue differently about the way it's run when it comes to alcohol. Alcohol seems to get away scot-free from everything, right? But I think that gambling addiction is something that will be prevalent, because there's addictions all over the place. But from what I see, again, it's the companies put in place things to stop it. But as with when I was in active alcohol addiction, I would have found alcohol anywhere, and people will bet up at two flies racing up a wall if they want to. If
you are truly addicted to gambling or to alcohol, you'll find your way to the bottle, or you'll find your way to the gambler.
And quite honestly, they probably aren't going online either. I mean, I think nowadays you have to do enough KYC and DD to get on or get money out or what have you. It's difficult now to do that. They're more likely to go to a local casino or whatever it might be. But they can recover too, but they have to unfortunately get to their rock bottom. If that's their affliction.
Is there so Mark, you've been part of the 12-step program for a long time. You've been speaking to a lot of other individuals with different form of addictions. Is there a way for you, do you spot someone who is in in trouble if you see them on the street or if you are in the same room with them? Is there a different way of movement or how they speak or how they act that you can sense as a potential someone who is not in the best place?
It might sound slightly contrived, but yes,
Yeah,
I can certainly sense someone whom is struggling, and I think that I recognise the energy, someone's energy, and it might not mean that they're struggling with the same thing that I struggle with, but I do see people when they're out and about, and I think, I hope you find peace, because you're not peaceful right now.
Yeah.
It's tough to watch.
Yeah.
And that's why I almost put my neck on the line by doing these sorts of things, in order that if one person sees it and they're the one that's struggling, that they know that they can also feel better.
Yeah.
That's it. And I think that the number of conversations that I had about mental health and how open places need to be about mental health, that same thing isn't the same about addiction. And maybe that's because, the 12-step recovery programs always have anonymous after the names. But I think that, a lot of the celebrity culture now is such that they're very open about their addictions. And I think that gives people the opportunity for it to be feeling a bit normal to be an addict. But yeah, I mean, you know when you know, right?
Yeah, yeah. Are there any misunderstandings, perhaps, from the general public about addiction?
It's very difficult to know what people's thoughts on it are. I mean, there's certainly misunderstandings about it from those that come into recovery.
Yeah.
I hear very often that, I think the thing about the room of recovery is you can have a high court judge sat next to a street drinker, sat next to a football player. Addiction doesn't discriminate. And you don't need to be drinking from morning till night to be defined as an alcoholic. You could be a binge drinker. You could be someone whom drinks too much for you. Drinks too much more than you did a year ago. There's no scale to it. It's your pain. How much is your pain?
Yeah.
And that pain is relative to you.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, and what would you say, Mark, like through the course of your life and going through the addiction to then recovering, what are perhaps some of the more important lessons that you've learned along the way through all of this?
Wow.
That is good for others to know as well.
Well, I mean, there is help. You
Yeah.
can recover. We can recover, and we do recover. You're not alone. If you're feeling like you are, a wrong 'un, or you're not a bad person, you're just not well. Addiction's a mental illness. It's not a stigma. And things that I didn't realize that I would need to know is that, I'm not important. My problems aren't important. I not that I don't matter, because I do matter to the people that love me, but the world isn't against me. The world doesn't want me to fail. I can make myself fail. And I think be willing to learn, be open to learning and to criticism, because it's not criticism in the sense of the word criticism. It's somebody pointing out a flaw in you, which you would probably do better if you didn't have it. And I'm open to that all the time. If someone wants to tell me that I'm doing something in a way that could be done better, then I'll happily take that.
Yeah.
Just be teachable.
Yeah.
I think we can arrive at a point in life where we feel that we've had enough experiences to have known all we need to know.
Yeah.
But it's when you take your foot off that pedal, you learn something that you didn't think you needed to know.
Yeah.
And also I think that having more of an open mind towards there being some kind of power greater than ourselves is really important as well.
Yeah.
Whatever that is for you as an individual.
Yeah, absolutely. And so Mark, you've talked about as well that you are actively helping other addicts to recover as well. Can you talk a little bit more about that work that you are doing And for if anyone is listening today who perhaps could use your or someone help, can you talk a little bit more about just the help that you are providing people?
In order to stay well, like, I have to give what I was freely given away. If I keep hold of it and do nothing with it, then I'm just pissing on what I was given for free. So that's my job, to give it to other people. I think what's really important is that, just because I'm open about my position in recovery, I never would talk about anybody else. I never mention anyone else, not to anyone. That's the anonymity of it. It's my choice to break my anonymity in order to hopefully help someone else that's feeling lost. But it's really just being there to support someone, at the end of a telephone if they need it, but also practically to go through, some strong work with them that I was shown, not my own stuff, the stuff that I was shown when I first came into recovery, and how it's helped me and how maybe that can help them if they so wish. It's just having someone there that's without judgment.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
And just a last question today to start wrapping things up. I just want to kind of think about this for a little bit. That a lot of people who potentially are addicts, do they know does every addict know in the back of their mind that they are addicts, or are there also people who are living in addiction who are very good at masking it for themselves? And if that is the case, can you talk just a little bit more about kind of these common denominators? And you spoke earlier about the lies that you tell yourself in order to feel that but this is okay, this behavior, or actually here's an addict over here and he's displaying that behavior, I don't have that, so what I'm doing every weekend is okay. And so can you just talk a little bit more about that, perhaps to the people who aren't necessarily recognizing in themselves that they are addicted personalities? I think that those who don't yet realise if they are, it either hasn't got painful enough for them yet. But, if you look, I find my experience tells me that addicts are extremely driven, extremely hungry. And you only have to look at, the industries in which we find addicts. You don't become an addict because you're a rock star. You become a rock star because you're an addict, right? That's why there's a litany of rock stars in recovery, because we are predisposed as addicts to be fearless. Having our condition means that we are likely to take more risks than someone without it. There is a spectrum there somewhere. Athletes, certainly football players from back in the day, there's a lot of them. I mean, quite how you manage to play Premier League football and be an addict is just beyond me. but it's there. And I think that, that it's not for anyone to tell someone else that they are or aren't something. No. It's for someone to find out themselves and realise it for themselves. But I think with any behaviour that starts to impact upon not just your life, but your life, the life of those around you, is unhealthy and needs to be looked at. Whether that's overeating, overworking, overtraining, over collecting cars, over anything that's obsessive, And I think that it's another rock bottom thing. Yeah. If for example you drink too much water, let's say, I don't know, just as an example, Yeah. I drink 74 litres of water a day. I mean, there's a problem there, right? Yes. Or I drink all these Powerades and, like, guilty as charged here, but they are sugar-free at least. So.
Well, you can tell yourself that. Yeah, that's quite beautiful denial. Love that. But no, I mean, listen. It's no one's judgment, and it's everyone else's journey of their own. But what I know is that I can still be obsessive about things. And the most banal of things. Like, outside you asked me how my weekend was. The bit that we didn't have the opportunity for me to tell you how pleased I was is that I managed to clean the house for about 4 hours. 4 hours. I don't live in Buckingham Palace.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? You know, I stick my headphones on, off I go.
Yeah,
you know, I get the gloves on. There's bleach on everything. Everything's mopped. Everything's swept.
What a guy.
But it's obsessive. Yeah. It's not healthy. It's ridiculous. It's you know, my partner laughs at me about it.
Yeah.
But
that's part of how your addiction manifests.
Yeah.
So it's going to, for you, it's still going to manifest in a different way.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You just need to pay very close attention
to
how it manifests.
And for me, the key is to acknowledge stuff like that. I can't sit in denial and pretend to myself that it's healthy to clean a house which don't need 4 hours worth of cleaning for 4 hours.
Yeah.
It's not right, you know. But that's the honesty that comes with being in recovery. It's that I don't have to be defensive about stuff anymore. You know, I don't have to sit and hold on to things which protect me because I have nothing to need to be protected from. Yeah. You know, but you know, people will know if there's something wrong. They just don't want to admit it to themselves yet. There's something. There's that kernel, that uncomfortability that's always there. Yeah. You know, and if you're hopping from one thing to the next thing to the next thing quite frequently, then that's also a marker. You know,
right. You like the consistency essentially.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because consistency is boring for an addict. It's really boring. You know, one of the things that I remember about being in active addiction was like the unknown, the excitement. I could end up anywhere.
Yeah.
You know, and very very often I did.
Yeah.
But I crave consistency and stability and structure now. Yeah. You know, and for me,
that's the antidote. Let's say that's the opposite.
Yeah, completely the opposite. Yeah. You know, it stops being about substances and drink very early on in recovery. Very very early on. It's very easy to stop doing what you were doing, drinking or drugging. It's very hard to stay stopped and look at yourself and change your behaviours.
Yeah, and that's where you need the structure in life, a stable job to go to every day.
Yeah.
Make the bed every morning.
Yeah.
Eat healthy food.
Exactly.
You know, so on and so forth.
Yeah, exactly that. Mm-hmm. But again, with consistency, but not with obsessiveness.
Right.
You know, and I can get obsessive about things. And again, in my little world, it's massive, but in the big world, it's nothing. You know, and often I find with talking about things, and you know, you hear about talking therapy, and I know it's not very cool for a man in nearly 50 to do talking stuff, but it takes the power out of it. You know, it means nothing once you say it out loud, or journaling, writing things down, because then you get to look at it as a third person observer. So it's almost like it's your thoughts lie to you. Yeah. We tell ourselves a narrative which defends our position that we want to take. So if you talk to someone about it, someone you trust, someone who's kind but honest, you'll very quickly get the answer. You know, and I always think as well, people have asked me many times, do you think I'm an alcoholic? My response is, I couldn't possibly say. I said, but I think you do. You know, because if you're asking whether you've got a problem, there's a chance that you probably have a problem.
Yeah.
You know? But that's great. It's not the end of the world. It's the start of a new world.
Yeah.
You know, in anything.
Yeah. Brilliant, Mark. It's been fantastic to have you on here, Mark. Thank you for sharing the story, of course, and for being open and honest. And like you said, if anyone is listening to this who would like to ask more questions directly, they can reach out to you. Please do. There's resources online, but you know, as I said, this is about confidentiality and anonymity, which sounds strange considering I'm here talking about it, but you know, that's my decision to break my anonymity, and I would never do it to anyone else. So if anyone's struggling, you don't have to. Yeah, brilliant. Thanks so much, Mark.
Thank you so much, Pierre, for giving me the time.
Anytime.